Welcome back to another episode of Running with Wolves, you guys. I'm excited for today's episode because I'm excited for a goddamn soapbox. You guys know how much I love to yap. Honestly, how much I love to yap. There's just no denying it at this point. I love a good yap session. Love something that I can get on my soapbox about. So I'm really excited about today because there's a narrative that I have seen floating around, and I thought we were done with this in 2022, but apparently it's back, just like jeggings are back, which is also wild to me, but that's a story for another time. So there's a narrative that's floating around. Like I said, it's honestly exhausting to me that if you want to hit 7 figures in sales, you need to go viral. I shit you not, you need to go viral. I saw this on Threads the other day. I saw someone who basically posted and not just like once, but like constantly, consistently. She was like, you need hundreds of people looking at your sales page every single day in order to hit 7 figures. Do the math, reverse engineer backwards, like how many people you actually need to see your content. Bottom funnel content does not do that for you. You need to be going viral every single day. You're like one viral video away from $1 million business. Okay. I have to take a deep breath before I talk about this topic. You know the TikTok sound where it's like, be nice, I'm finding it. That's how I feel sometimes when I talk about this topic, because it just infuriates me. This narrative that like you are one viral video away from $1 million business. Do you know how many people have viral videos that do not convert? Why? Because they are top of funnel content only, and they do not sell and are not accompanied by bottom funnel content. I honestly don't know if this thread that I saw was like rage bait or like trying to get people to talk to her so she could like basically sell them. But here's what I need you guys to say. Here's what I need you guys to understand. And honestly, this is the truth because I've talked to so many different people who specialize in top of funnel content, whether it's virality, paid ads, doesn't matter. You do not need more eyes onto your content and your business and your brand consistently in order to create $1 million brand. Now, here's the thing. Do I preach top of funnel content? Yes, but it needs to be accompanied. That's why there's an entire fucking funnel. If that was the thing that was actually going to create sales for you, people would just go viral. That's not the thing that creates sales. In order to create sales consistently, you have to be able to sell the current audience that you have, but then also attract in new people, warm them up, get them to be obsessed with your brand or your business, and then convert them into a sale. They go from top of funnel to middle of funnel to the bottom of the funnel, and then they create sales, and then you start all over again, and it's a cycle, right? In order to create $1 million brand, you do not need more eyes onto your brand or your business. In fact, if you are someone who's making $50,000 per month, I would venture to guess you actually have the leads in your audience that you need in order to create $1 million year. You just don't know how to get them to buy. So I basically want to talk about in this episode the marketing strategy that I used to scale to multiple millions of dollars in sales by focusing on sales psychology, buyer specific messaging, and conversion focused content, and how you can do the same without ever needing to go viral. Okay. So before we do that, let's get into some mistakes that people are making when it comes to virality and sales. Number 1 is chasing visibility without a conversion strategy. Okay. This is the top mistake that I see people making when they're trying to scale. They think that their audience is the problem. I hear this all the time. People are like, I just need more eyes onto my business. You don't need more eyes. They think their audience is the problem. They think they need 100,000 followers, 10,000 email subscribers, 1,000 people on a sales page per day. But in reality, they've had all that, or even if they did, it still wouldn't convert. So for example, and I talked about this in another episode recently, I had an accelerator client who was getting hundreds of eyes every freaking day onto her sales page. And she actually thought it was a messaging issue that like they weren't converting. But it turns out that her sales process was overly complex. She had 2 inquiry forms, no clear call to action. Her pricing was front and center with no context or value positioning. But once we simplified her process and added like a super straightforward application with price ranges and better positioning, she got 7 qualified leads in 24 hours, you guys. That didn't come from virality. That came from fixing her sales process. I had another accelerator client like a year ago. She was in the UK and she sold safety keychains that basically, women could carry around. It had like a pocket knife on it and pepper spray and just different things like that, so that like as they were taking public transportation or just different things like that, they felt super safe knowing that they could defend themselves, right? She had hundreds of thousands of followers on TikTok, but could for the life of her not get people to buy unless she was going live on TikTok every freaking day. And she's like, this is not sustainable. Like, I can't do this. Guess what? The second we started to introduce, because she had viral content and she had educational content. The second we started to introduce content that showcased the solution of these keychains, i.e. keeping women safe, helping them make sure they can defend themselves, she started seeing a shit ton of sales. Again, bottom funnel content, not top of funnel content. And in fact, she was constantly going viral beforehand and seeing no sales because it wasn't accompanied with any bottom funnel content. Mistake number 2 is that believing going viral is a strategy. You cannot scale a business on algorithm luck. It is so inconsistent, you guys. Going viral is not a lever that you can just like pull on demand. It's unpredictable. And most importantly, it doesn't always attract actual buyers. I've had people literally straight up tell me, they're like, Savannah, I have gone viral twice with this same style of video. I keep posting it. It's not performing well. I'm like, yeah, because you're trying to hack the algorithm. That doesn't create sales because no one knows what it freaking wants, right? There is some strategy behind it. Sometimes the algorithm changes and you have to catch up to it, right? For example, there was a couple months ago, there was like a bunch of updates that TikTok was rolling out to the algorithm, community guidelines, all of these different things. And so content for a lot of my clients that used to perform really well wasn't performing as well before. So I was doing a bunch of research around it and I saw a bunch of other creators talking about how that was happening to them as well. I was looking at larger creators, their views were down too. And so it's really truly due to the algorithm and not always something that you can control. But if you have a decent sized audience and you know how to get them to buy, it doesn't actually matter if you go viral or not, as long as you just have a steady flow of leads coming in every single day. You should not have to rely on virality to create sales for you. So for context, another example, I had a client who went viral on TikTok. And in 4 days, she gained 10,000 followers on TikTok. A ton, right? This has happened to me before as well. She was so excited until she realized that those people really weren't converting to her. And what we realized was that it was because her content was speaking more so to curiosity than it was to commitment. Meanwhile, one of my other longtime clients with under, I would say about 6,000 followers used bottom funnel content and she made $108,000 in sales in 2 weeks, you guys. No trending audios, no ads, just clear messaging, polarizing opinions to differentiate her from her competitors, proof of process, and a sales-focused strategy. Because the truth is that virality gets attention. Absolutely. There's no arguing with that, right? Virality gets attention, but it does not close sales. Visibility gets eyeballs, but it doesn't build trust. If your content does not sell, your offer will not either. No matter how many eyes you have on it, no matter how many people you have in your community, it's not going to sell for you. So what I want you to focus on instead is focusing on content that actually moves buyers through the decision process, not just content that racks up likes. Which I know is tough for some of you guys. I've actually had a conversation with a lot of clients who are like, why is it so hard for me to not care about like vanity metrics, like views or engagement? And that's because we are taught that vanity metrics, views, engagement, virality equals sales. You have to change the narrative in your head. That is not what creates sales. Mistake number 3 is assuming, again, there's that theme of assuming, that top of funnel content should be your focus. At some point, you have to graduate from brand awareness to brand conversion. Most people are stuck posting tips, inspirational quotes, behind the scenes content, trending audios, and while that can absolutely attract people, it doesn't close them into sales or customers or clients. So here's what you actually need. Once you have all of that, you need to start adding in solution selling content, objection handling content, offer awareness content, and sales focused storytelling. But here's the part that no one is willing to say is that you're literally sitting on money right now. I don't think you know this, but you're sitting on tens of thousands of dollars in sales already in your audience, already in your community. You've got people who are there who have been watching you for months. They've read every freaking caption you've posted. They've opened your emails. They lurk on your stories. They click the link in your bio, and still they have not bought from you. Not because they need more time, not because they don't have the money, but because you haven't said the thing that makes them move. And deep down, I think you actually know that, because that's why you ask yourself the question, what do I need to do in order to get people to buy so consistently? Every time you hear a marketing guru say that you just need to go viral, I need you to plug your freaking ears and be like, la, 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 and drown out the noise. Because that is not a marketing expert. That is not someone who understands how to turn your content, your virality, your engagement into actual sales. That's somebody who knows how to increase your vanity metrics, not your ROI, not your cash in your pocket. You don't need more followers. You need to stop hiding your product or your service from your audience. You don't need more reach. You need to say the uncomfortable truth that your buyers are actually thinking. You don't need a new offer. You need messaging that sells the value of what you've already created. I want you to ask yourself, if you had to restart your business tomorrow and couldn't gain a single follower, could you still make money? Because if not, you don't actually have a growth problem. You have a conversion problem. Okay? So let's get into my strategy and how I hit 7 figures without going viral. Because what I will tell you is that the year that I hit my first $1 million year, I made $1 million in sales, just barely, but I did. I think I was like at 1.1 or 1.2 or something like that. That was like 3 years ago. I built it without any paid ads. I had that year maybe 3 videos go viral. And by viral, I mean 250,000 views per video. My audience grew, absolutely. But what was really interesting was it wasn't like I had this onslaught of leads. And even though I had a bigger audience, I got more recognition. I would say like better quality leads more so than anything, but it's not because I went viral. Interestingly enough, if you look at some of those videos where I like went viral, because weirdly enough, like sometimes I still have a lot of people like comment on them, even though they're from freaking 2024, right? If you look at a lot of those comments, they're not my ideal client, because that's usually what happens when you go viral, right? It gets to a certain extent to your target audience, but then it gets just like pumped out to random ass people. There are some people, because one of them is talking about my, like my journey to becoming a $1 million business. One of them is talking about like my crazy morning routine at that time in my business or something like that. And then I forget what the other one was. But if you look at the comments, a lot of them are like making fun of me. A lot of them are like, no, there's no way that you actually created these results, right? So it's like that virality isn't actually even something that like created results for me, created sales for me. Like, yeah, I went viral, but that wasn't the reason I had $1 million year. In fact, the majority of my leads that year still came from Instagram. It's because I dialed in what to say to get people to move, what to say to get people to buy, and I sold to the audience I already had. So instead of just like relying on virality, I got obsessed with what my buyers needed to believe to buy, what their objections were, what kind of proof they needed to feel safe investing in my services, right? What kind of messaging actually made them move? And I reverse engineered all of my content around that. I didn't post what felt fun. I didn't post like trending videos or like dancing videos. I posted some of those things, but not with the intention of them like going mega viral, with the intention of them showing brand personality and yeah, maybe getting a few more views. But also if you look at them, all of like the on-screen text is very strategic. It's very targeted. And so it was part of my conversion strategy more than anything, rather than visibility. The other thing I also didn't try to do was try to be like everywhere, right? I had 2 main marketing platforms. Excuse me. At the time, I did not have this podcast, and I maybe sent out like a monthly newsletter, and that was it. That was truly it, you guys. And at the time, I think I ended up getting like 80,000 TikTok followers. Oh my God, I sound like my grandma. TikTok people. So I think I probably had like 80,000 followers over on TikTok, and I think I had maybe 8,000 on Instagram. That's it. That's all it took for me to have $1 million a year, you guys. It was not anything crazy. It truly was me dialing in, knowing exactly what they needed to say from market research, my data, sales conversations, and putting that in my content over and over and over again. And I would say 80% of my marketing strategy was mid-funnel content, like warming content, getting people obsessed with my brand, and converting content. And what's more than that, I would say probably the majority of that percentage was converting content, because people came into my world and were immediately warmed. And then it was just about getting them over the finish line to actually get them to buy. Because I basically knew one thing to be true, which is that once your audience trusts you, they love your brand, they know your brand, they like your brand, they trust your brand, right? And they know that you can help them. So they know they have a problem, they know that they have a goal that they absolutely cannot solve on their own, and they know that you offer that solution. They don't actually need more content. They need a reason for them to say yes. They need a reason to move. It's urgency. It's objection handling. It's helping them overcome their fears. It's basically pushing them over the finish line once you know that the interest is there. And that, my friends, is fucking bottom of funnel content. Thank you so much. Good night. Tip your waiters. I'll be here all year. No, just kidding. So let's dive a little bit into how I figured all of those things out, right? So how did I figure out what they needed to hear? How did I figure out buyer types? How did I figure out their objections? I literally got that straight from the fucking horse's mouth. All of that came from my market research. All of that came from listening to people in my DMs, in my sales conversations. All of that came from looking at my marketing and my sales data. The year that I created my first $1 million year, I always say was the hardest time in my business, because I was trying to figure out what to say to get people to buy more consistently, right? It was that like, what do I say? What's my messaging? Like, what's the one thing that's going to get them to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I fucking need to work with Savannah, right? Because before that point, I had done well, but content still really felt like pulling teeth as far as like creating sales. People were still taking a really long time to buy. And when they did inquire, I didn't know why. And so basically what I started to do was I got obsessive. If you know me, you know I love a fucking spreadsheet. I love data. I'm just such a nerd, you guys. Like, I don't think a lot of you guys understand how much I nerd out. Like, if you could see me when I'm working on client work and they send me all this data, I'm like hunched over on my couch with my glasses on, like looking at all of these reports and spreadsheets, just like beautiful minding it, trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. So I got really obsessive about tracking my data, because up until that point, I wasn't really tracking data and I wasn't really reviewing it. So I wasn't really seeing like what was landing, what wasn't. So I didn't have clarity around like what was moving the needle for my audience. So I got really obsessive with that. at that point, there wasn't a lot of platforms that did a really great job around tracking like marketing and sales metrics for you in a way that I needed it. So we did it very manually. Now we use things like Metricool, Bitly Analytics, and then on top of that, we obviously track like our sales data for sales conversations and things like that manually in ClickUp through like our lead gen spreadsheet. So I did that. And then from tracking and analyzing that data, I was able to get really clear around, I would say probably the top 5 things as far as topics go that were really converting my audience. And I would just rinse and repeat those things. And then the second that something would come up in like a sales conversation, I would put that into my content, or an objection, I would put that into my content, or a new social proof, I'd put that into my content. So it's like I already had things that I knew really converted. But then from there, I had things that I knew my audience was consistently struggling with. Like I've talked about all the time, my marketing is both proactive and reactive. So like you need to see what your audience is really loving based on your data, but then you also need to listen to what they're telling you and respond to that in your content. And that's exactly what I did. And so those sales conversations, that market research really told me exactly what they were struggling with and what they wanted, but how they would phrase those things was huge, because people need to see themselves in your content in order to consume it, and then in order to see the value in your product or your service. Same thing with their objections, right? If somebody, like I had 2 people in 1 week say like, oh, I just need to think about it, or like, oh, I'm shopping around, like I'm talking to another social media manager at the time, or an agency or whatever. And so I immediately started talking about like the questions you need to be asking to make the right agency hire, right? Or like the difference between us and other agencies, right? So all of that was immensely helpful in being able to respond to all of those things in my marketing. And so all of that combined really helped me consistently get more leads coming in, easier sales processes that closed faster, and it all just kind of compounded and created a little over $1 million in sales that year, which was really exciting. But what I want you guys to remember is that didn't come from ads. That didn't come from virality. That didn't come from anything that was like super top of funnel. That came from knowing what I needed to say in order to get them to convert and pushing them over the finish line. And so I need you to understand, like when you hear these people saying like, oh, you need to focus on virality, no, you don't. And I know that there's a lot of conflicting information out there, but please take it from somebody who not only has scaled their own business to, multiple millions of dollars in sales exclusively through organic marketing. I have never, ever once paid for any sort of ad. Okay. This is all organic marketing. In addition to that, I also have helped so many of my clients hit very high multiple 6-figure years, or even multiple 7-figure years. Okay. Product, service-based businesses, any industry, you name it. And guess what? We didn't fucking do. Prioritize virality. You have to learn how to activate the audience you already have. And so that means knowing exactly who your buyer is, creating demand through specific strategic messaging, sharing content that handles objections before they're even voiced. That's what creates highly converting marketing. That's what creates fast sales processes with little to no objections. That's what gets DMs from people saying like, I've been watching you for a while and I'm finally ready. Like, let's fucking do it. And you're like, who are you? Where did you come from? Right? That is what builds a $1 million business. Not reach, not going viral, not follower count, but sales focused content that converts. So if this episode hit home for you and made you kind of realize like, oh shit, I have been focusing on the wrong things in my marketing, and you have questions about incorporating bottom of funnel content or like converting content into your strategy, message me on Instagram. I would love to help you with that. And in addition to that, if you have like a really large audience on any of your marketing platforms, if you're constantly going viral, if you're creating good sales, like $50,000 in sales per month, But you're like, for the size of audience I have and for how consistently I go viral, I should be making way more. I want to have a conversation with you because you're in such a special position that like literally just a couple shifts and changes in your marketing and you could be making millions, 110%. So DM me the word sales on Instagram. I would love to chat with you. And as always, let me know what your favorite part of this episode was. Let me know what other questions you want, things you want to hear in our future episodes. And I will see you guys in the next one. Mwah! Bye guys. Have a great rest of your day.